It appears we've lost the transmission of the House Democrats sit-in as the House is gaveling in for a new legislative day. Live coverage on C-SPAN.
House will be in order. Will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conroy.
Let us pray. Merciful God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. Continue to guide the destiny of these United States. Bless the members of this assembly. Grant that all their deliberations give rise to understanding and that amity prevail in the people's house. By your divine inspiration, may we as a nation reach the destiny you have in mind for us. May all that is done be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceeding and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The chair will lead the House in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, by the direction on the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 797 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 130, House Resolution 797. Resolved that upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider the conference report to accompany the bill, H.R. 2577. Making appropriations for the Departments of Transportation and Housing and Urban Development and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2016, and for other purposes. All points of order against the conference report and against its consideration are waived. The conference report shall be considered as read. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the conference report to its adoption without intervening motion. During consideration of the conference report, the second sentence of Clause 1A of Rule 19 shall not apply. Section 2. It shall be in order without intervention of any point of order to consider concurrent resolutions provided for adjournment during the month of July 2016. Section 3. On any legislative day during the period from June 23, 2016 through July 4, 2016, A. The journal of the proceedings of the previous day shall be considered as approved, and B. The chair at any time may declare the House adjourned to meet at a date and time within the limits of Clause 4, Section 5, Article 1 of the Constitution, to be announced by the chair and declaring the adjournment. Section 4. The Speaker may appoint members to perform the duties of the chair for the duration of the period addressed by Section 3 of this resolution, as though under Clause 8A of Rule 1. Section 5. It shall be in order at any time on the legislative date of June 23, 2016, or June 24, 2016, for the Speaker to entertain motions that the House suspend the rules as though under Clause 1 of Rule 15. The Speaker or his designee shall consult with the minority leader or his or her designee on the designation of any matter for consideration pursuant to this section. Section 6. Upon adoption of the conference report specified in the first section of this resolution, House Concurrent Resolution 139 shall be considered as adopted.
House will be in order. Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 hour.
Mr. Speaker, this rule provides for consideration of appropriations for seeker response and military constructions and Veterans Affairs, provides for necessary authorization of the district work period. I yield back the balance of my time, and I move the previous question on the resolution.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes have it. Resolution is agreed to without objection. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, isn't it customary when we debate a rule that the hour is divided 30 minutes on each side?
The gentleman asking for a recorded vote?
No, I had a parliamentary inquiry, which I was not recognized for, wanting to know where our 30 minutes was for the debate.
Is the gentleman asking for a recorded vote?
Absolutely, but I would like to know where our 30 minutes are.
Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
While the House takes a vote, we'll show you a rally from earlier today with Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi as the House Democrats began their sit-in to demand a vote on gun control legislation.
This is great.
Good afternoon, everyone. As we gather once again to speak out in favor of honoring our responsibility to protect and defend the American people, once again we are fighting an uphill fight to have legislation brought to the floor that would do just that. Right now, as we gather on the steps of the Capitol, there are many on the floor from the House and Senate, sadly to say, just on the Democratic side, although I know our support for this legislation is bipartisan. Legislation to no fly, no buy. If you're on the terrorist list, you can't buy a gun. And for sensible background checks. That's a dual agenda that we have. It was the agenda that was spoken to by Senator Chris Murphy and other senators on the floor of the Senate earlier this week. Our members are gathered on the floor of the House in protest that we cannot even have a vote, because we truly believe that if there were a vote, that we would win the vote. Because 85 to 90% of the American people, depending on the bill, support responsible background checks legislation, which is bipartisan, and the no-fly, no-buy legislation, which is bipartisan. So I'm honored here to be here with my colleague, Leader Jim Clyburn, Dan Gross from the Brady campaign, Congressman Bobby Rush, who will tell his personal story, Congressman Mike Thompson, who is the chair of our task force on gun violence prevention, Elizabeth Esty from Connecticut and Newtown, and Congresswoman Robin Kelly, who will speak about the gun violence that happens every day in our country. Since Orlando, probably nearly a couple hundred people, at least over 150 people have died from gun violence in the streets of our country. We want to address that issue, as well as to deeply pray for those who lost their lives and their family members in Orlando and all of the mass shootings before that, but also remembering those who lose their lives to gun violence every single day. With that, I'm pleased to yield to the distinguished Assistant to the Leader, Mr. Jim Clyburn of South Carolina.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Leader. Thank you. Last Friday, all of us paused around the country to commemorate the first anniversary of the death of 9 of my constituents. 3 people survived that night, 2 by playing dead, and 1 because the killer walked up to her and said, I'm going to spare you because I want you to carry the message. Now, that young man made it very clear that he was not about any foreign issue or any kind of international terrorism. He said that he was doing what he was doing in order to start a race war. Now, the interesting thing about this is that that young man was not eligible to own a gun. In fact, the background check had been undertaken. But as the leader said, we want reasonable, effective background checks. We have a big loophole in this law that, because of this incident, is now called the Charleston loophole. And that loophole is simply this: if within the 3-day period the background check is not completed, the gun sale can be consummated. Well, because wrong information was keyed in, either purposefully or by mistake. The fact of the matter is, at the expiration of the 3 days, the background check had not been completed, and it was some 2 days after that. But by this time, this young man was in possession of the firearm and went to Emmanuel AME Church to carry out his threat. We want effective background checks. We want the list, the no-fly list, to be honored in such a way that potential, dangerous, demented people will not be able to so casually purchase firearms. And so I thank all those who are gathered with us today for being so effective in their pursuit of reasonable constraints on a constitutional right, the Second Amendment, just as we have reasonable constraints on the First Amendment and all others. And with that, I'd like to yield to Dan Gross to speak in whatever manner he wishes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Representative Clyburn, for all your leadership, and as always, Leader Pelosi, for doing your job as a leader and making the voice of the American public heard. I'm Dan Gross, president of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. I'm honored to be here today to represent the voice, really a growing chorus of an American public that has had enough gun violence. I'm joined here, I have the honor of being joined here with so many people who have their own personal stories. You see some pictures behind me, just small testimony to the heartbreak and daily carnage that happens on this issue, joined not only by the Brady Campaign, my organization, but so many others that have come together really in an unprecedented way in the wake of the tragedy in Orlando to do something about this issue. We're here on behalf of the more than 150,000 activists that have already called Congress to make their voice heard on this issue, and the millions more from a growing coalition of organizations plastering social media with our outrage, holding elected leaders accountable to put our interests ahead of the interests of the corporate gun lobby, to, as we've been saying, disarm hate. And I am here on behalf of all of them to say, hell no. Because of what happened in Orlando, there are 49 more families that will never see their loved ones again. And Republicans in Congress are trying to rush home to their own families. Hell no. Our nation is terrorized by easy access to guns every single day. 90 more families that will never see their loved ones again, every single day. And you're trying to get out of D.C. to start your vacations? Hell no.
Hell no. Hell no.
After the hate attack in Orlando, Brady supporters made those more than 150,000 calls demanding a vote to stop terrorists from passing Brady background checks and to expand those background checks to all gun sales. As Leader Pelosi said, legislation overwhelmingly supported by the American public. And because of that, and the heroics of Senator Murphy and some of his colleagues, we got a vote in the Senate, and we are now turning our attention to the House. And those who continue to put the interests of the corporate gun lobby ahead of the safety of the American people, make no mistake, we're putting you on notice. We're not going away. Americans are standing up to disarm hate, to say enough to gun violence, and demanding a vote in the House. No bill, no break. Hell no.
No break. No break. No bill, no break. No bill, no break.
No bill, no break.
No bill, no break. No bill, no break.
Okay.
No bill, no break.
All right. One last point. If you want to make your voice heard, along with these great leaders here, along with the people that have already suffered unimaginably, along with all the activists and organizations that are out there, what you can do is text "Call Paul" to 877-877, and you can tell Speaker Ryan, no bill, no break. Leader Pelosi.
I earlier mentioned that we would be joined by Congressman Bobby Rush. He can't be with us right now, but on another occasion, I want you to hear from him directly as a person whose family has been directly affected. And when he spoke on this issue to us before, I'll just say this one quote. He said, "There's no more scream, more primal, more pathetic, more shrieking than the sound of a mom who's learned that her child has been shot." With that, I want to yield to the distinguished chair of our Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, Mr. Thompson of California.
Thank you all for being here, especially those who were survivors and had family members lost. I know how much courage that must take to be out here. Thank you for showing that courage. Thank you for speaking up, trying to make sure we get something done. I can't begin to tell you how proud I am of my colleagues today. I just took a break from them. They're on the House floor, making sure that our voice is heard, your voice is heard. We need a vote on these bills. And believe me, we're not asking for any radical bills to be brought up. We're asking that we bring up two bills that have overwhelming support on both sides of the aisle. Bipartisan measures. One that you've heard about already, no fly, no buy. If you're too dangerous to get on an airplane and fly, well, then you're certainly too dangerous to be able to go legally buy a firearm. And that should be just an absolute no-brainer. It's bipartisan. Matter of fact, it's a Republican author, Peter King, who has that bill. We want that brought to the floor for a vote. The other measure is background checks, expanding background checks. So if you buy a gun through a commercial sale, you have to get a background check to make sure that criminals and the dangerously mentally ill don't have easy and legal access to a firearm. That's not asking a lot. That bill has 186 bipartisan co-authors. That bill should be brought up to a vote and brought up right now. What is it that the Republican leadership is afraid of? What is it? I want to share some numbers with you. It was 3 years ago that Leader Pelosi asked me to be the chair of this task force. 3 years ago. It's 3 years since Sandy Hook. Since then, 1,158 mass shootings have taken place. Over 34,000 people have been killed by someone using a gun. We've had 30 moments of silence on the House floor. But the most important number yet is 0. That's how many bills this Congress has had an opportunity to vote on to deal with gun violence prevention. It's shameful, and it shouldn't be that way. What is it that the Republican leadership is afraid of? Are they more afraid than those kids at Sandy Hook Elementary School? Are they more afraid than those people in the movie house in Aurora? Are they more afraid than the parishioners that were shot and killed in Charleston? Are they more afraid than the 49 people who were hiding, trying not to get shot in that club in Orlando? What is it that they're afraid of? Bring these bills to the floor. Let the American people have a say-so. Let their representatives vote to help keep our communities safer.
We are honored by the presence of Congressman Bobby Rush. Bobby, thank you for being with us.
I want to thank you, Madam Leader. I come from a place where gun violence is a daily, multiple, many times a day occurrence. It's so bad in Chicago that the murder of a 3-year-old yesterday is old news because of the proliferation of guns in my city. I live in a danger zone. When I pull up to the intersection, me, my constituents, if a car pulls up beside us, there's fear. We don't know what to expect. When I drive along the expressway, we don't know what to expect. We don't know where the bullet will come from. We don't know whether or not a young man or young woman who is young but armed. We need effective, sane, common sense gun control legislation. We need the House of Representatives to be the representative of the American people and not just the representative of the NRA.
The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
I have a parliamentary inquiry.
Gentleman will state his inquiry.
Does H-Res 797 provide for any debate time at all on a conference report that we just received a few hours ago that's quite lengthy?
Chair will invite the member to read H-Res.
Well, okay.
797.
Well,
yes.
yeah, and Mr. Speaker, for the parliamentary inquiry, I did, and I don't see any time for debate, which kind of surprises me. But my further parliamentary inquiry is, will the House be allowed to have a separate vote on whether or not we remain here and deliberate on other business or adjourn? Will we have a separate vote on that?
The gentleman has not stated a parliamentary inquiry.
Well, when I read the rule, apparently we don't. So we're locked out of everything, if I'm understanding the rule correctly. This is a lousy process.
Does the gentleman
Mr.
have a parliamentary inquiry?
I think I've
For what purpose does a gentleman from Kentucky seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to the rule just passed, I call up the conference report to accompany the bill H.R. 2577 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the title.
H.R. 2577, an act making appropriations for the Departments of Transportation and Housing and Urban Development and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2016, and for other purposes.
Pursuant to House Resolution 797, the conference report is considered read and the previous question is ordered. Question is on adoption of the conference report. Pursuant to Clause 10 of Rule 20, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
The House is voting on the conference report to the military construction VA spending bill that provides funding for research. A series of votes, including passage of the conference report, will occur in quick succession, with a vote to adjourn for the July 4th recess.
Thank you.
239, the nays are 171. The conference report is adopted without objection. A motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Chair lays before the House the following enrolled bill.
H.R. 3209, an act to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to permit the disclosure of certain tax return information for the purpose of missing or exploited children investigations.
The chair lays before the House the following personal request.
Leave of absence requested for Mr. Clausen of Florida for today, Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas for Tuesday, June 21st, and Mr. Marino of Pennsylvania for today and the balance of the week.
Without objection, the requests are granted. As the chair has announced previously on the 414th Congress, the Speaker's policy announced on January 6, 2009 with respect to the use of the chamber will continue in the current Congress. The chair would call particular attention to the aspect of this policy regarding the use of certain devices. Because outside coverage of the chamber is limited to floor proceedings and is allowed only by accredited journalists, when the chamber is on static display, no audio or video recording or transmitting devices are allowed. The long custom of disallowing even still photography in the chamber is based at least in part on the notion that an image of having setting up as a backdrop might be taken as character immature of the House. Pursuant to Section 3B of House Resolution 797, the House stands adjourned until 9 a.m. Friday, June 24, 2016.